Today I'm going to talk about something that beginner players and sometimes very experienced players have an issue with, something that they struggle to deal with, and that is, as you can see from my screen, is single entity monsters. And war hydras are the poster boys of the single entity monster spam. Now, a single monster in an army or a few is not that big of a deal. But when most of the army is composed of those single entity monsters, you've got a big problem to deal with. And especially later in the game, you're able to afford such an army. So, how do you deal with it? How do you stop them from eating just about everything you got? So today we've got a multiplayer battle game against the Dwarves. This is a multiplayer campaign, as you can see from the levels over here. It's an underway interception, and we're gonna see how Dwarves are able to deal with this. Now, traditionally, the way you deal with this is with any kind of spam is by spamming the counter to the unit being spammed. Or in the case of single entity monsters, you bring in your anti-single entity monsters. So that could be your halberdiers. That could be your anything infantry equipped with anti-large weaponry, so slayers, dragon slayers, or anti-large monsters to counter them, such as demigryphs, crushers, things of that sort. So there is always a rock, paper, scissors, just multiplied by the amount of targets that you have. Now, the reality is, of course, is a bit more complicated, but the other thing you can do is having a more balanced army just with the direct answers to those big threats. And today, the Dwarves are bringing exactly that, a balanced army. We've got Slayer Pirates, which don't have anti-large, Bugman's Rangers, which are made specifically to counter Shades. Now, Dark Elves also have brought Shades, and they have them deployed behind these cannons. Cannons is the big counter to, honestly, most of anything in any roster, because they are very accurate, do a lot of damage, armor-piercing damage. As such, they are great as anti-large. So let's see how Dwarves are going to be dealing with the Hydra spam. The key things that I would like you to pay attention to are the heroes and the lords. So these are specifically recruited to deal with these hydras, but there's only a few of them. And against this many hydras, how are you going to be dealing with that? Well, the small hitbox of the dwarves really compensates for their lack of monsters in dealing with this front. I especially picked dwarves as the faction because they do not have a direct response in the terms of monster on monster. So let's see how the cannons are dealing with this. So we had the Grombrino took a big chunk of the health from that War Hydra. It's gonna pop another, takes its place, and there it did. Did not even matter. Bam. In just a few seconds, the first Hydra went down, and now they are on to the second Hydra. The key to dealing with Hydras are probably one of the hardest ones to deal with, because you need to focus fire those Hydras since they have regeneration and another takes its place, which is a burst heal. So dwarf heroes have taken some damage, but they're still trading upwards. And of course they all have their own regeneration in the form of liquid fortification. With that said, Dark Elves have deployed the Shades behind the cannons to do damage just the moment the lines are about to engage. This way, it makes it harder for the Dwarf player to notice what is going on before they do their bit of damage. Another good way of dealing with the large and single entities is guns. Since their projectiles are much faster compared to the arrows, they are significantly harder to dodge, oftentimes impossible. So now we have a group of Hydras that are engaging with the main lines of the Dwarfs. And mind you, the Dwarfs did not bring any frontline infantry because they knew what they would be fighting. So we've got a 3-on-4 engagement going on here. You would think that the Hydras would be able to do good, but no, not at all. The small hitboxes that the Dwarves are providing, that the Dwarves are bringing to the field, are hurting the damage potential of all of these Hydras. So we've got one cannon that has just went down. They finally saw the Shades firing on the cannons. Of course, the cannons are a massive threat. Probably the biggest threat that the Hydras can handle, because there's really not much that they can do against something like Garagrim Iron Fist over here. Dark Elves are trying to counter it by bogging down these heroes, but even then, just look at the sheer damage that they were able to do. 920 damage from Grombrindle, and another 960 damage with 80 damage being anti-large. This is absolutely massive. Only takes a few hits to deal with them. Got the Black Arc Bombardment coming down on those Bugman's Rangers. Right now, things seem somewhat evenly matched, but with the Hydras going down one by one, it's only a matter of time before these heroes join the mainline battle. Until then, the Dark Elf army needs to do enough damage in order to justify the losses. Now, Shades are one of the best units in the Dark Elf roster because they are a hybrid infantry, even though it says missile infantry. They've got fantastic melee abilities, they've got fantastic melee stats, similar to Slayer Pirates, but they also have armor-piercing range attacks, so that makes them very effective to deal with pretty much anything. They are a good answer to anything, they're a very efficient answer, but in the late game, they simply get outmatched against the more high tier and stronger infantry. That's where they bring in the War Hydras. As you saw, those Slayer Pirates just charging into melee. Despite those good melee stats, those Shades are going down. And now their ability to fire is restricted. Bugman's Rangers, those guys are still firing. They are regenerating every second, which makes them an ideal duelist against enemy range. Just look at this. There were about 4 or 5 Hydras in here, and now only 2 are left. So, in a way, the way to counter single entity monster spam is having your own hero spam and attacking one by one. Even in the single entity monsters that do not have regeneration, it is still very important to kill them off one by one, and I'll tell you exactly why. Because as you kill the models, they no longer have the same damage potential, buying you even more time to deal with the rest. Now you might think, shouldn't these Hydras be able to outrun them? Not if you build the Dwarfs for speed. Grombrindle here with 64 speed, which is somehow faster than the Hydras. You also have got the Slayers with the Foe Seeker that have 78 speed, just as fast as a cavalry unit, as a fast cavalry unit. So never let it be said that Dwarfs don't have fast units. Just look at that damage. It is absolutely obscene, but that's the case. We are about 100 turns in a competitive free-for-all game, so these are the types of things you should expect to see and should be ready against. I've got these a few Dread Spears that are trying to engage with those Slayer Pirates. But yeah, these Hydras are very much already paid for their value. I mean, while it's showing very little, 836 and all, they've still done fairly well because they weren't threatened by, well, the cannons, the infantry and all that. In contrast, let's take a look at Grombrindle. 6,000 value. Thorny Ironbrow, 800 value, not too much. 4,000 value. And another 2,000 value. And now that the lines have been joined, you can see those Hydras are just waiting there because these are so powerful. Dark Elves must decide if they're going to commit them or just make them run away to fight another day. Since this is a campaign battle, that is definitely an option, and that's what they have decided to do. There's just nothing else that they can pull. They've just used a Dark Conduit against those Slayer Pirates, which are a fantastic unit as well. They are unbreakable, they don't have anti-large, but they are just a good unit with their ranged attacks and their good melee stats. Another Hydra has just went down to the hero stack that the Dwarves are bringing. Now, per the Long War rules, players are only able to embed up to 4 heroes in each army. So you can't just bring in 19 heroes and enjoy your constant victory. But even when that is the case, even when you're dealing with such powerful heroes, there is always a counter. You just need to know what that is. And I wanted to show you that single entity monsters are not as undefeatable as they first seem. Do not give in to despair. Be creative and use the counters that your faction has access to. And every faction does have, in some way, answers to single entity monsters. So fantastic work from both players. I would like to thank Cat and Lineflip, Lineflip being the Dwarf player and Cat being the Dark Elf player, for providing me the footage for this battle. I was personally controlling those shades that were in the back. Yeah, if you're interested in joining similar games, find us at the Discord link in the description for head-to-head games. Oftentimes we have new Long War games starting, and if there aren't any, you are always encouraged to join in as substitutes, which is a fantastic way of getting experience in such games. Well, this pretty much wraps it up. I hope you've learned something, and I'll see you next time.